from Hebrew University in Jerusalem in the field of Bible research, both with honors. She worked as a tour guide in many places in Jerusalem, including Yad Vashem, the International Holocaust Remembrance Center, and volunteered with Holocaust survivor organizations. Maya has worked with young children for many years as a teacher, but mostly as a librarian at an elementary school in the city of Modin. Maya relocated to the US with her family 4 years ago. The Photographer's Son is Maya's debut book. It was published in Israel under the name The Photo That Saved Us by Kibbutz HaMeuchad Publishing House and won the Yad Vashem Award for Educational Enterprises. Maya will speak for about 40 minutes, and afterwards we will take questions. We respectfully ask that you remain muted during the presentation, and if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box or the chat, and we will do our best to get to all of them at the end. So thank you very much, and Maya, I will hand it over.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen now. Just let me know that you actually see it, please. Just a second. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I think just a second, I'll just make it like this. Okay. So, hello, everyone. I would like to start by thanking the AJLs for the honor of speaking with you today, and thank you, Gail, for inviting me. I will speak today about my book, The Photographer's Son, not only as the author, but also as an educator, because as mentioned, I was a teacher and a guide, and for many years I was a librarian in elementary school in the city of Mandil, and I spent many years working with children. We're on the 5th of February, and in 20 days, we're going to mark a year since the war in Ukraine broke out. And it's going to be a whole year. I can't imagine it, but it is. And it was about around this time, that the war broke out, that my book was published in Hebrew back in Israel. I can show you here. I hope you see it well because I'm a bit blurred. But this is the Hebrew version. It's called Hatsilum otanu, the photo that saved us. It was published by the Kibbutz HaMeuchad Publishing House with the help of B'nai Brit organization that was kind enough to support the publishing of the book. And I was amazed that the event that took place in my book that happened 80 years ago became so relevant again, unfortunately. Again, children and families leave their homes and wander to a safer place. Again, cities in Europe are being bombed, and I just could not believe it. Now, a Polish photographer by the name of Justyna Milinkiewicz, she traveled to Ukraine to take pictures to capture moments in time for the world to see from that war. And she said, wars are not just a story of blood being spilled and buildings being destroyed. People become indifferent because it means nothing to them except that another building is destroyed. And at a certain point, the victims unite into one victim, and it doesn't matter anymore. That's why, for me, war always consists of individual stories. And I believe what she said is true. Since the remembrance of the Holocaust is very important and the number of victims is beyond reach, I was looking for many years for an individual story to tell children, a story that I can adapt for children that tells them about the Holocaust, but at the same time doesn't intimidate them from learning about it as they grow up. Back in the days when I was a little girl, we did not study about the Holocaust in elementary school, except for one day. Every year when Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel came about, we were taken to a classroom similar to what you see here. It was covered with black fabrics and sad pictures were hanged on the wall. And we would walk around this classroom, see the pictures, the Yellow Star of David and the 6 candles to commemorate the 6 million victims. And after 50 minutes or so, we'd go to a regular day almost. There was a ceremony at school, of course, and the siren that cuts through the air all over Israel for 2 minutes, but that was it. And the Holocaust was not a subject they taught us except that specific day in elementary school, of course. And we did not want to know more about this subject because it was dark and it was frightening and it was sad. Today, there are many sources that teachers for all ages can use on websites like Yad Vashem website or the Israeli Ministry of Education and others. teacher can find videos and stories and documents they can use in class. In that regard, a lot has changed since the data revolution. Still, in many cases, the subject of the Holocaust is being taught only around the Memorial Day in elementary schools. And in many of them, children would still go inside a room like that, a classroom covered with black fabrics. And ask myself, is this the right way to do that? Because you can see this boy in the picture looking at those candles and black fabrics, and what this boy would remember tomorrow, or in a year, or in 10? Would be interested in learning about it? I think we need to do everything we can so that what the Polish photographer said would not come true, that all victims would eventually become one. We must tell the individual stories that adults and kids could relate to. So for many years, I was looking for a story that would fit for children. And I have to say it was difficult, because when I was working at Yad Vashem as a guide, I heard a lot of testimonies by Holocaust survivors, but they were too difficult for young children to understand or to digest. And I think that young children should get to know the subject of the Holocaust gradually if you want them to continue to learn about it in the future. And this is the reason I wanted the story that I'm going to write to have an optimistic message, a story that as much as possible, keeps its heroes together, and that alongside the hardship also has a lot of hope in it. And I think this way, alongside the difficult parts of the Holocaust, the children would also know that, the young children would also know that there was also some amount of light. And one day, I was asked by leaders in our community in Rockville, in Maryland, to take a group of teens and their parents and walk them through an exhibition that was taking place in our JCC, at our JCC. And it was a traveling exhibition of Yad Vashem, and the name of the exhibition was Besta, a Code of Honor, and it told the story of Muslim Albanians righteous among the nations. Righteous among the nations are people who were not Jewish, who saved Jews during the war, risked their lives and freedom while doing so, and asked nothing in return. And I have to say, I knew, of course, this phenomenon, but I didn't know anything about it in Albania. The only thing I remembered about Albania that it was mentioned in the table made by the Nazis at the Wannsee conference, and Albania had the lowest number, as you can see here, the lowest number of Jews in it, only 200 out of 10 million. But still, the Nazis wanted to get there too and include these Albanian Jews in the final solution. So, in order to know more about the phenomenon in Albania, I went to the exhibition and studied it before I came there with my group. The exhibition was made of pictures taken by this man, Norman Gershman. He was an American photographer. He heard about this story of rescuing the Jews in Albania during the war, and he was curious about it. So he traveled to Albania several times. In about 4 years, he traveled back and forth, and he looked for the people who rescued Jews and took photos of them. And if they were already gone, they passed away, he took pictures of their children or spouses. Now, Albania is located to the northwest of Greece, here in the green, you can see in the map, near the Adriatic Sea, and you can see how close it is to Italy. I'm going to mention it soon. Today, only a few dozen Jews live in Albania, most of them in Tirana, the capital. And on the right side of the slide, you can see a picture from a small museum, Solomon Museum in Albania, that tells the story of the Jews in Albania. But a larger museum on the left side, you see a larger museum that is going to be built by the AADF, the Albanian American Development Fund, in the city of Vlora, where Jewish people settled before 100 years before our time. Historians believe that the first Jews first settled to Albania, came there after the destruction of the Second Temple in the year of 70 AD, the Second Temple in Jerusalem. You could see how close Albania is to Italy, and they believe that the first Jews to come there came there on the Roman ships. And in the picture, you can see the remnants of a synagogue that was excavated by 2 Israeli archaeologists in the city of Sarande in Albania. And they date this synagogue to the 4th century. They found Jewish symbols in the mosaic floor, like the shofar and the menorah. And this synagogue was operating until the 6th or the 7th century, for a long time. We know that Jews settled mainly in cities near the shore, as indicated in the map. Not all of them, but many of them. And we know that when the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492, the Ottoman Sultan Bayezid II, he actually invited the Jews to live throughout his empire, and he sent ships to pick them up, to evacuate them from Spain. Some of them went to settle in Albania. Back to the exhibition. Here in the picture, you can see some of the relatives of the righteous among the nations who saved Jews in Albania during the war. And the question is, what made those Muslim Albanians do that? Risk their lives for strangers, for Jewish strangers. And for that, we have to go back to the name of the exhibition, Besa, a code of honor. Besa is one part of an ancient Albanian set of social laws that is called canon. And researchers that study the canon think that this code is ancient and goes back to the days before Islam and even before Christianity, to the pagan tribes of Albania. The social canon rule was first drafted, the text was fixed by this man, a noble Albanian person by the name of Leke Dukagini. It happened about 600 years ago, and it was called after him in many cases for that reason. But the canon still was not put in writing. It was going from mouth to ear for generations until a little bit more than 100 years ago, this man, Stefan Jekovic, who was an Albanian Catholic priest, first wrote it. It was first written only then. The canon of laws contained every aspect of life, like households and family and felonies and marriage and more. And Besa is the part that deals with promises. The literal meaning of the word Besa is keeping a promise. And we can see some of the rules that connected to the Besa part. Before the house belongs to the owner, it first belongs to God and to the guest. At any time, day or night, homeowners need to be ready to receive a guest with a fire, a log of wood, and a bed. The guest must be honored with bread and salt and heart. Albanians would die rather than break Besa. All these laws were fulfilled in the story that I'm going to talk to you about. Because of the goodness of the Albanian people and their canon of laws, of social laws, Albania is the only European state where after World War II, the number of Jews in it was 100% higher than before. Jews fled there from several countries like Greece and former Yugoslavia. Going back to the exhibition, I decided to pick one story of one of the pictures of one righteous among the nations and try to investigate who he ended up saving. Because as a guide, I wanted the group I was talking to have their whole round story with the names and the faces, not only of the person who rescued, but also the people who were rescued by him because of the goodness of his heart. And for a reason that I'm not sure of until now, I chose this picture. You can see the big picture of the man over there. This is the late Refik Veseli and his wife, Drida, that passed away about a year or two ago. Refik was a photographer, just like the family I was writing about in my book. And maybe I was drawn to this specific picture because I myself owe my life to a camera, similar to this one that you see, the old one that you see here in the picture. My grandfather was a photographer as well. He studied photography in Bratislava, not far from the family I wrote about in the book. And one day, a young woman stepped into his studio to take a passport photo. She wanted to move to Brazil and look for her father, who went there and never came back. And the moment my grandfather saw the woman, he fell madly in love. And to make a long story short, she was my grandmother. So I have a connection with the camera, as you see. Looking for the Jews who were saved by Refik Veseli, for the first time, I came across the story of the Mandil family. And it wasn't long until I understood that I found the story I was looking for. The story of the Mandils is full of hardships and it's full of hope. the family, the parents and 2 children stayed together all through the war, except for a short period of 2 weeks. I'm going to mention it. The story contains all the values that I hope my young audience that I was aiming for will absorb while reading. And not only that, but the story also had another added value of Mishoah Letkuma, from destruction to revival, since the family is still a family of photographers. They made Aliyah in December 1948, and they still have a school of photography in Tel Aviv by the name of Studio Gavra. And who is Gavra? You can see him right here on the right side of the slide. Gavra is here about 3 years old, standing in a box of film that back in the days you had to put in old camera. I guess probably some of you remember. And I decided that Gavra would be the protagonist of my book. One of the reasons was that I wanted it to be a children's book, and I wanted that my readers could relate to the story. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the main ones. Gavra and his family lived in the city of Novi Sad. You can see it here in the map in the yellow circle in the former Yugoslavia. And this is the whole family. Let's meet them. This is the Mandil family, the father Moshe, the mother Gabriela or Ella. In between them, you can see Gavra. And on the right, you can see the little girl of the family, Irena, but everybody called her Beba because she was the baby of the family. And there was another very important figure in that family. This is Grandma Beshka holding Gavra in her hands. Grandma Beshka was a very young grandma. She became a grandma to Gavra when she was 39. She was Gabriela's mother, and she lived with another daughter of her, Aunt Giza, in the city of Belgrade to the north of Novi Sad. You can see it here in the yellow circle. And the family, Mandil family, went to visit Grandma Beshka and Aunt Giza many times. They were there for a short visit, sometimes the whole weekend. The war already broke out in 1939, of course, but the family did not feel it yet. But you can say that the war took them by surprise because in April 1941, they went to visit Grandma Beshka in Belgrade for a visit of a weekend. They didn't take much with them. It was supposed to be a short weekend, and they came to visit. And on that weekend, where they came to visit Grandma, the German decided to attack Yugoslavia, to invade Yugoslavia and attack from the air. They bombed Belgrade, a very serious bombing from the air on April 6, 1941. And the Mandil family was visiting Grandma Beshka. And it was very scary. For hours, planes were bombing Belgrade. And Gava, as a little child, was about 5 years old, a little less than that. He remembered this serious bombing well. And they all ran to the basement of the building with all the neighbors and sat there for hours until it was over. And remember that how, when they went out to the street to see what's going on and to get some fresh air, he saw all the building around that were ruined, and he also saw some dead horses on the streets. And this was a sight that he never forgot. Now, because of an agreement between Germany and Hungary that gave Hungary the territories to the north of the Danube River, the Mandil could not go back home. If I go back to the, just a second, I'm sorry. If I go back to the map, you can see that between Belgrade and their house in Novi Sad, you see the Danube River, so they could not go back home. And they would see their home only 3 years later, a long time after. And they had to stay in Belgrade, in the apartment of the grandma, and report to the German. And Moshe had to work in whatever the German told him to, and like sweeping in the streets. And they all started wearing the Star of David on their clothes and starting to fulfill the laws against the Jews in other places that the German conquered. And after a few difficult weeks, the German decided to send the Jews to work in work camps, or at least so they said, and ordered all Jews in Belgrade to arrive a few days later to the city center, and Jews who will not report would be executed. Now Moshe, the father of the family, feels in his gut that something is wrong, and he decides not to report with his family. And there is an argument between him and Grandma Beshka, who wants to obey the German because she doesn't want to, she knows what could be wrong, that it could be wrong, you know, getting in the German's way, and she doesn't want to make any troubles. But Moshe, together with his wife, Gabriela, they decide to try and escape. They want to travel south to the territories of Kosovo, somewhere in the circle, in the yellow circle in the map that you can see over there. Why there? Because there, these were the territories where Italians took over, and they thought that hopefully they'll be more sympathetic with the Jewish people. So with the help of their friends, they tried to get fake IDs. And in the meantime, they split up, and each member of the family is going to hide in another place. Gava was taken to a family. A man took him to his house. There are about 2 boys about his age he can play with, but he misses his family very much. It's the first time he got apart from his mother and his father and his little sister, who he loved very much, for a long time. So remember this period he remembered it very clearly. And he also remembered that 2 weeks later, the man that took him to his house, explaining to him that the day after he's going to take him to the train station where he's going to meet his family again. But he cannot run to them, and he cannot call their names. He cannot attract any attention because of the soldier that are going to be at the station as well. So he also told him something else very important. He told him that his last name is not going to be Mandil anymore. It's going to be Mandic from now on. And he has to remember that. And not only that, his father's first name is going to change as well. His name is not Moshe anymore. His name is going to be Mirko from now on, and he cannot forget it. Gava unites with his family the day after at the train station, and he's very excited. And also he's very excited to see them, but he's also very sad to learn that Grandma Beshka and Aunt Giza decided not to join them. They stayed. And they don't know if and when they're going to see them again. And the Mandils, now the Mandiches, go on the train, and at the first stop, the German soldiers take the IDs and documents from all passengers. The train would not leave until every document is checked. So they wait a long time because there were a lot of passengers on the train. And all of a sudden they hear a soldier shouting, "The Mandic family, the family of Milko Mandic, go off the train and report." And it took them a few seconds to realize and remember that they are the Mandiches. So full of fear, they walk off the train, and a German soldier takes them to the office of a German officer. And the officer looks at them and says, "You are Jews, you're not getting on the train." And Moshe tries to convince him that they're not Jews, that their name is Mandic, and it is not a Jewish name, but nothing helps. And the officer insists, "Your father's name is David, and David is a Jewish name, you're not going on the train." And Moshe looks at Gabriela with fear. Outside, he already saw the wall of death where people who were suspected to be Jews, fleeing Jews, got shot and killed. And he's reaching for any document he can find in his pockets with his shivering hands, still looking for something. And in a minute, after a few minutes, he finds something, and he has nothing to lose. So he says to the officer, "Just a moment, sir, I have a proof that we're not Jews. Please look at this picture." And he shows the officer the picture that you're going to see here. Here in the picture, you can see Gava and little Beba standing next to a Christmas tree. They, of course, did not celebrate Christmas at home, but it was a photo that Moshe took to advertise his photo studio. He would put it in the window of the shop, and people would see it and come inside to take nice picture of their kids as well. And for some reason, he had it in his pockets. And the German officer looks at this picture and cannot decide whether to believe them or not. And a few seconds go by, nobody speaks, and you can cut the tension with a knife. And suddenly it is Beba, little Beba, that breaks the silence and says, "Hey, here I am next to the Christmas tree." She was about 3 years old. And the officer looks at her. She was a very sweet little girl. And after a few seconds, he says, "Okay, you can get up on the train." And that picture saved their lives. And it will not be the last time the photography profession would help them during their journey. But what happened after they get back on the train with the same officer, I will not be able to tell you now. We have a short time. Let's just say I was amazed when I first heard about it. And I'm still amazed to know that it happened, and I leave it for you to read. Eventually, the Mandils managed to get to the southern territories where they wanted to go, but they were not alone. Many Jews got there too. And the Italian soldiers decided to take all the Jews that fled to the area of the city of Pristina and put them all together. I'm talking about more than 120 Jews, kids, elderly, families. First, they put them at a school building and then in a prison where they will spend a whole year. I have a picture from that time, but before that, I will tell you that it was very crowded. In every cell, you can see now Gavla and his father Moshe in their cell. In every cell, there are about 3 or 4 families. It was very crowded. The bags you see over there, just behind them, are their closets. They didn't have anything in their cells except some mattresses and whatever they found, some little objects, but nothing, no furnitures. And there was, of course, diseases, and there was hunger. It wasn't an easy year. And after a very difficult a whole year in that prison, the Italian soldiers provided them, the Jewish prisoners, by then there were only 60, about 60 of them. They provided them 3 almost broken down trucks, and they let them go to Albania because the Italians knew the Albanians would rescue people in danger. They did it for them too in World War I and in World War II as well. Somehow the Mandils and the other Jews who were with them on that truck managed to get to Albania, even though they didn't know the way, and even though the truck was in a very bad shape. But as they get to Albania and cross the border, they immediately feel the change in atmosphere. People are smiling at them and give them food and clothes, and no one is yelling at them or telling them what to do, as it was before in other places. And even though the family had quite a share of adventures in the first period of their time in Albania, I will have to skip to the part of the story where the Mandils find themselves in the capital city of Tirana, living in a small apartment together with a friend who owned a photo studio downtown. Well, it was actually a miracle that they found this man. When they moved to Tirana, Moshe and Ella were looking for a place for Moshe to work, to provide for them. And nobody wanted to hire, of course, in war times. And just before they gave up, they saw this last photo shop in the city center that they haven't been to. And they went in. And as they went in, they saw a man called Neshad Prizani, a man that they knew. Apparently, he was working as an apprentice for Gavriella's father, who was also a photographer. He was a photographer of the king in Belgrade. So he knew them and he was very happy to see them. And not only does he hire Moshe, but he also lets the family stay at his apartment. Here you can see Neshad, the taller man, just with Gavla and Beba and Moshe. And it was in his shop, his photo shop, where Moshe meets Refik Veseli. Refik was by that time a very young man, 70 years old, a young man who was an apprentice in the photo shop, and he became a very good friend with Moshe and the rest of the family. Here you can see a picture of Moshe and Refik in the entrance of the studio. By that time, the Germans already conquered Albania, and German soldiers started to look for Jews all over and very thoroughly. And one day they came inside the photo shop when Moshe was there. Refik, who was a very smart young man, he quickly told Moshe to hide under the black cloth of old cameras that you can see here. You remember that there was in old one, there were like a black fabric like this, so the picture would be okay. So he told him, go and hide. And he himself spoke with a German soldier until they left. They asked him if they knew Jews, if he knew Jews around there. And it was a very scary moment. And after that scary moment, Moshe understands that Tirana, the capital city, is not safe anymore. But he has no idea where to go. He has no idea where to go from that place. But Refik, who is an Albanian that knows the best code and a good friend, decides to help the family. So the day after, he travels north to his home village in Kaluya and asks his family to hide the Mandils, who were in great danger. And here you can see In yellow circle, you can see Karoya, the village, the home village of Refik, and Tirana is where they're staying now. He's traveling to his village to ask his family to hide the Vesilis. In this picture, you can see some of Refik's family members. Most importantly, you can see the father, Veseli, and Fatima Veseli, mother of Refik. This is Refik himself. And he asked them to help the Vesilis. And without any hesitation, all of them decide unanimously to say yes, to help Refik's Jewish friend without even knowing them. They knew they were risking their life and their freedom and maybe their lives if they're going to be caught, but they still said yes. And after a few days, Veseli, Refik's father, came to Tirana with 4 donkeys so he can escort the Mandils and lead them to his home. Refik himself stays in Tirana and continues working at the photo studio so no one would suspect him for helping Jews or ask any questions. The journey was long and difficult. At first, the kids were very excited about riding a donkey, but like most people, they were tired of it after an hour or so. Their whole body was hurting. And they could travel only at nighttime, so less people would see them, and had to sleep during the daylight in caves or in the woods, so no one would notice them, and it was very difficult to do so. But Mr. Veseli led the way with patience and kindness. And one evening, they had to go across a checkpoint with German soldiers. There was no way to bypass it. So they gave the documents to the soldiers and waited for approval to go on their way. They all had Albanian fake identities and Albanian traditional clothes, and most of them had dark eyes and dark skin and dark hair, so they could easily be considered Albanians. But Gabriela, the mother, had light blue eyes, a kind of eyes that you don't usually see in Albania. So the soldiers look at her and immediately start to suspect that her ID was fake. And they started asking her questions, and it was very, very scary to all of them because the Mandil and Refik's father knew what would happen on the spot if the soldier discovered that Gabriela was a Jew. Their lives were in the hand of those soldiers, and Gabriela knew German, and she understood exactly what the soldier was asking, but she was a smart woman. She understood that whatever she does, that moment would sentence her and her family either to life or death. So she looked at the soldiers and said in Albanian, what? Fa? She keeps repeating it, no matter what they ask or what they say. What? Fa? And in the meantime, the line of people who wanted to move through this checkpoint got longer and longer. So after a few more tries, when they asked her a question and she answered, what? Fa? The soldier decided that this is not going to work, and this is a crazy lady that doesn't know anything about anything, and send them off to their way. Gabriela managed to save herself, her husband, and Mr. Veseli, and her family, not her whole family, and Mr. Veseli, by playing the role of her life, you can say. She was a true hero on that frightening moment. After 3 or 4 nights of dangerous journey, they managed to get to Refik's home at Karoya. And even though it was dawn time when they came into the house, as the best laws dictate, the family was ready for them with fire to warm them up, food to feed them, and open hearts. And Refik's parents arranged a small room for the family just above the barn. And Moshe and Ella, the parents, had to stay there almost 24 hours a day and hide. Gavra and Beba, on the other hand, spent most of their days running around, playing with the other kids of the Vesilis' huge family. They were taking care of dogs and hens and goats and cows. They were climbing the trees and enjoying their fruits. They felt like part of the family, just as the best laws dictate. And Gavra was always amazed how Fatima, Refik's mother, took care of everything so no one would go to sleep hungry. And there were actually 7 people hiding in their home because shortly after the Mandils got there, 3 relatives of Gabriela came to hide there too. It was the Ben Yosef family, Gabriela's cousin, her husband, and his sister. So 7 people. And at night, it was very crowded in that room above the barn when the kids came to sleep there. But it was a good thing that Ben Yosef, Mr. Ben Yosef, was a real storyteller. He passed the time by telling stories of books he read and films that he saw. And he told the kids about the Bible stories. So he passed the time. And every now and then, the German soldier would search for Jews in the village houses as well. And the adults, of course, would hide in that room over the barn. But sometimes the kids, Gavra and Beba, did not have enough time to hide. So Rafik's father, on those occasions, would say that Gavra, whose name now was Ibrahim, and Beba, whose name was Fatima, were the kids of a relative from a neighboring village. And on those searches, they all prayed that the soldier will not find the room above the barn, because this would be tragic. And I cannot tell you much more about that time because of that short time, the short time that we have, but I urge you to read about the final search in the book, because there was a moment there that Gavra and Beba thought their parents were found and that now they're alone in the world. And I will leave it for you to read about the courage of Mr. Vesely, Rafik's father, and what happened in the end. Almost a whole year went by until one evening, Rafik, who always brought some news with him, came to visit and told them that the German retreated from the area. The war was not over yet, but they left the area and they're free to go to get out of the hiding places. And after such a long time, the Mandil family could start its long way back home. And this is the last picture of the two families before the Mandils left and started their way back home. And at this point, I decided to finish my book, the story of their way back home, finding out that Grandma Beshka and Aunt Giza survived the war, seeing their hometown after so many years. It was quite amazing. It is an amazing story. But I decided to finish my book here because I wanted to leave the children, my readers, with a good feeling of the fact that the Mandils were saved by good-hearted people who saw people in front of them, not Jews or refugees, but people who were in danger and needed help. The Vesilis gave them the help they needed while endangering their own lives and did not ask anything in return, hence fulfilled the definition of righteous among the nations. Gavra Mandil kept in touch with the Vesilis throughout the years. It was difficult to do so because for 40 years after the war, Albania was ruled by a communist regime and was isolated from the outer world. Nevertheless, Gavra did as much as he could to have the Vesilis recognize the righteous among the nations. Here you can see the letter he sent to Yad Vashem asking for this recognition. And it was 1987 when he sent it. It took some time, but in July 1990, Rafik Vesely and his wife Drita come to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, and to a very moving ceremony, they got to be recognized as righteous among the nation. You can see them here in Yad Vashem at Ohel Izkor, and just above them with the white shirt, you can see Gavra. Rafik, together with his parents who already passed away in the meantime, got recognized as the first Albanian to be righteous among the nation. Today, there are about 75 Albanians who are recognized as such. Gavra Mandil, that you can see here with the grandchildren, passed away in 2006 at the age of 69, leaving behind him a big family and a true legacy of professionalism. He became to be a very famous photographer in Israel for many years. And actually in 3 days, there's going to be an exhibition of his photos that he took. It will open in Beit Meirov Gallery in Holon to mark 60 years to Studio Gavra that he established, the school he established in Tel Aviv. This is the logo of the school, Studio Gavra. And why a rooster, if you ask? I can tell you that in ancient Hebrew, going back to Aramaic as well, the word Gavra means the man, but it also means the rooster. So it shows the rooster to be his logo. To conclude this presentation, I would like to thank you again for listening. I hope that together with the right education, the next generations will not forget the Holocaust, but keep its memory safe with them. And I believe that stories of individual people, like the story of the Mandil, can be very helpful for this goal, because children will remember individual stories and hopefully they will dwell in their hearts. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was absolutely fascinating. Do we have any questions from the audience? Since we have a few minutes for that. Go ahead and put them in the chat if you are able.
Rebecca, can I just ask one on by speaking? I noticed, Maya, that the Israeli book and the English language version have two different covers.
True.
Can you explain what brought that about? And also, my second part of the question is, Yad Vashem was, it's been hard to prove what the Albanians have done, as you said, because they were behind the Iron Curtain. And Yad Vashem has very strict regulations. Because of stories coming up now and people aren't alive to give testimony because of time, has Yad Vashem loosened a little? Have they acknowledged that there were many more Albanians? And how can we help getting the Albanian righteous that help Jews into Yad Vashem and honored as righteous amongst the nations? That's all. Those are my two questions.
Okay. For the first one, the Hebrew version is a little bit different. You can see here to children, because I think that for the Israeli audience, I wanted it to be only a children book. I wanted my audience to be children. I was working with Israeli children. I know what they would like to see. I know their taste. I know their I lived by working with them, and I thought it was very important for us to have and also the inside the book you also have not only pictures but also illustration by Noam Nadav, who is amazing. He was very sensitive to the story, and I think his illustrations are just, I don't know if you can see here the scene with the officer, the Nazi officer.
If you hold it closer to yourself, Maya, we should be able to see it.
Okay. Like this. It was very, I have to say that in Hebrew, in Israel, I published a book with a publishing house, and they decided that this is the illustrator that I wanted, and they turned to him, and we decided together how to call the book and how to design it. But it wasn't all my decision. In the English version, we decided to turn not only to children but to adults as well. And you can see that the cover, you can see the cover there is very typical to World War II stories. And people who love to read about this period and about the stories from that war would see that and know that this is exactly what they were looking for. I did not want it to be only a children book in the English version, because I think this is a book that can turn to many audiences. I know there is a very people are very interested in the time of that war. Not only Jewish people, but many people read those books, and I think this is a part of we wanted the book to be clear about what it contains. And this is the way that we could do it through the cover. The illustration inside this book are different. It's not the illustration from the Hebrew book. We took I took another illustrator, which is actually my daughter. She in the beginning of every chapter there is a little illustration, but it's not as big as the illustration that you can see in the Hebrew book. And for the other question you asked, I don't know if Yad Vashem got a little bit softer with their demands for the recognition of someone to be recognized as righteous among the nation. I know that they want very specific facts and very specific, to be very, very certain about the fact that the person who saved it was actually a righteous among the nation and fulfilled all the principle that he has to fill. But as time goes by, it's very difficult to make sure that other people will be recognized as righteous among the nation, not only in Albania, because the people who now are with us, the Holocaust survivors that are with us, were children by that time, and maybe they didn't get all the facts and details they have to be recognized as righteous among the nation. For example, for the research of the book, I spoke with Beba, who is now a very nice lady living in Haifa in Israel. She's about 85 years old, and she can't remember every details from that time, of course, every detail, like where exactly, in what house they were located, and was the last name of people who were the saved or to let them in for a night. She just can't. And I'm not sure it will happen, that it's going to be softer demands, but who knows? I don't know. Maybe they'll adapt to the time we're in now, right now.
Okay, thank you, Maya. There's another question in the chat. It says, you briefly mentioned the Jewish Museum now planned for Vlore. What will be the focus of its exhibits, mainly the Holocaust, and what kind of artifacts will be displayed?
I wish I knew. I don't know that. And I guess the story of the Jewish people being rescued by Albanians will take a big part of the museum, but other than that, I'm not really sure.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I've got a comment. There's somebody here, Anna Cohen, Dr. Anna Cohen, who's trying to get Maya's book in the curriculum of the Albanian education system. Anna also has written a book of her memoirs, and it's been translated by a wonderful man who couldn't connect with Maya, and through Anna connected, and he did the translation because he was just in love with the story, and then they connected and arranged it. So it's in Albanian, Hebrew, and English, and thanks to Anna and Maya.
True. Thank you very much.
Okay, there's another question that came into the chat. It says, Dear Maya, I'm listening to you from Belgrade. The story is wonderful, and we know a lot about Gavri Mandil. In Serbia are many teachers who deal with education about the Holocaust. Are you thinking of publishing the book in the Serbian and Albanian languages in the future? In our country, there is not much literature about the Holocaust intended for children.
Well, I hope it's going to be translated to Albanian soon, as we just mentioned. I don't know. I don't really know about other languages yet. I do as much as I can to promote this story because I want it to be heard. It just came up to Amazon a few weeks ago, so everything is very, very new, and I hope good things will happen with it, because I think not only Jewish people but all kids need to know and need to hear about this this dark time that we have to prevent from coming again, and let them identify with figures that they can read about and relate, so that they would want to be better people and not to harm anybody in their lives. So I hope it will go and as much wherever it can go, but it's not only me that has to do everything about it.
So we have a question someone would like to know, is it possible to buy an inscribed copy of your book? Where is it possible to get a signed copy of your book somewhere?
Well, if they're in Maryland, I'll be happy to do that. No, of course I can. Where I can send a signed copy, of course. If they want to come over, be my guest, of course. But if I can also send the mail if somebody wants a signed copy. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yes, the person's in Silver Spring, so we'll get him the contact information. Larry asks, could you please briefly display the Hebrew version on your screen?
Yes, of course. This is the Hebrew version. It's called Hatsilum, otanu. It is, you can see here, it has about 17 chapters, and you can see here that the illustrations are and the pictures are a big part of that book.
Can
I
I ask a
edited
question?
by Yona Teppel. She was great, and also the illustrator.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I missed the first part of your talk. This is very fascinating. And I was all the period wondering, how did he take these photos? What kind of a camera did he have? When were the films developed? I mean, how did it come, this miracle of these photographs existing?
This is a good question. I think that he managed to, even when he was in prison, in the Italian prison, Moshe managed to improvise a camera inside the prison because it was very, I don't know if it was because he was very initiative or because he thought maybe it can help him in some way, as it has before. But as he tried to do that, and he actually he was a very friendly man, and the Italian guards actually liked him very much. And as soon as he managed to improvise the camera, he started taking picture of them, and he actually made it very he found a technology to make it very big pictures, and they sent it home, and they were very, very happy with it. So sometimes they actually let him go out of prison, go to the city and buy whatever equipment he needed, and he did it inside the prison. So he was very initiative. He really liked taking photographs. I don't know how he managed to save it with him, because I guess because he wasn't, they weren't in concentration camps or in clearly in death camps. So he did manage to have some of his equipment with him or documents with him throughout the way.
Wow. So he created negatives somehow?
Yes, he did, and Gava helped him. Gava helped him in doing that while they were being in prison. He was actually very happy, and I write it in the book as well, because he was very happy about it. He was the son of the photographer, so he got to not go to sleep later than the other kids who were even bigger than him, because he had to help his dad with the negatives. So it was something very important for him as well.
How to be a night owl.
Night owl, yeah.
Okay. So do like one or two more quick questions, since we are at the end of the hour. So one of the questions is, what age group is the Hebrew version appropriate, and where can you purchase the Hebrew version?
The Hebrew version can be bought mostly in Israel. It cannot be bought yet in other stores like Pashoshim, if you know. It's not there yet. But I have several copies in my house, because I managed to get some whenever I go to Israel, but mostly in Israel, unfortunately. In the English version, you can buy on Amazon.
And you live in Silver Spring, Maryland?
In Rockville, Maryland.
In Rockville? Okay, so we're not far away. I want to ask another thing, if I may. Is there a catalog from the gallery exhibit that's happening now? And where exactly is the gallery?
It's located in Bet Meir, in the city of Holon, near Tel Aviv, in Israel. And it's going to be around from February to, I think, mid-May, but I have to be sure about that. And what was the other question?
Is there a catalog from that exhibit?
Oh, I saw publication in the newspapers, but I'm not sure about the catalog. I can ask his daughter. I'm in touch with her. I just wrote her. She had birthday yesterday. We just were in touch today, and she put the the cover of the book as part of the exhibition as well. So I'm not sure you maybe you can look it up on the web, but I can ask her if there is a way to get to the catalog. Yes, but mostly I'm not sure, but what I saw that mostly in the newspapers, I saw that they have many pictures like the who's in Israel that they went to him to be photos, like singers and models and all. He took pictures of all of them. So I'm not sure how many pictures they will have from earlier times than I think they have more than of his professional career in Israel.
Oh, that's also interesting.
It is beautiful
Wow.
picture.
The last question is, what are you working on next?
Oh, well, my next book is so totally different. It's going to be published in Israel in the end of the year, and it's going to speak about a boy, 14-year-old boy, that will live in about 150 years from now in the future. And he understands there is only in my world that I invented, there is only one government to the whole world that is separated to 10 territories. And his parents, this boy's parents, his name is Ruby, and his parents are very high ranked in this government. And he discovered that his mother, who is the one who is in charge of the elderly territory, is going to do something very difficult to the citizens of that territory. And he is trying to fight her. And the idea behind the story is how we treat elderly and old people and how it needs to be. And that's a story. And I'm also trying to get in touch with another person who I hope to be my next Holocaust-related story in the near future.
Great theme.
That sounds wonderful. We had one more really important question, which was from Alban Rayleigh, the translator of the book from Hebrew to Albanian, and would like to ask if is there any extension of the content in the English version?
No, it's quite the same.
All right, with that, I think we are at our time. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I really appreciate it because you
It
were
was wonderful.
tuning in from across the world. And thank you so much to Maya for this amazing presentation, and to Gail for setting this up, and Jackie for all her tech help. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday and week. And thank you for joining us.
Available online.
Thank you.
Available to see
Yes,
again.
we will be
Maya.
posting the recording in the Association of Jewish Libraries presents on YouTube once we get that set up, and you'll receive an email when that happens.
Oh,
Okay.
that'll be good. Great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rebecca. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is
Bye.
great.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Dale.
See you all.
Well, I am so glad that we managed to